No,
I know you're a good corrector when you say that, Miami. Only people from Miami who came from Miami before it became Miami say it that
You know,
way.
you say what your daddy said.
Yeah, yeah.
He was born in the same place that I was born in Homestead, or South Dade County. And we were right on the edge of the Everglades. I mean, the Everglades came right up to where we lived. And that was where we played. It was basically the Sweetwater Everglades, but the brackish Everglades wasn't far away. There was a dirt road that went down into the park, and it had just been made a park when I was a kid. It was still being farmed. And the farmers had, grandfather clauses to farm in there. So well up into my youngerhood, they were still farming in the park. And so, fishing and hunting, it's just what we did as kids. It was just right there, and it was what was available. And so it took priority early in my life over organized sports. I was never into any of that. And it was a time in Florida where if you operated farm equipment as a kid, you could get your driving license when you were 14, your regular license, which I did. My family did farm. I did get my license. So I had a truck at 14. And some of my friends, one of them bought a boat, one of them bought a motor and a trailer. I had the truck. And so suddenly, at 14, 15, 16 years old, we had equipment. I mean, we were fishing, seriously fishing. And that evolved to exploring and making a pain in the neck out of ourselves, following the old-time guides around at a respectable distance. At least we felt it was respectable. They didn't. But we followed them around and we learned tons until we had enough information and knowledge ourselves to begin really innovating. And it was a wonderful time to grow up in South Florida. Light tackle fishing was just getting started in saltwater. Fly fishing, just getting started in saltwater. So I got to grow up in that crucible and know the people that were pioneers in the sport and the innovators in the sport. And the phenomenon of fishing clubs developed in South Florida. There were 5 or 6 very serious fishing clubs, and they competed inter and intramurally. So there was competition, good fellowship, not serious money competition, but bragging rights sort of thing. And so that competition spurred things along. And at the same time, to combine with all of those things, new materials and products were just starting to, monofilament. When we started, there was no monofilament. So I saw that come. Good outboard motors that would actually run for more than minutes at a time. Fiberglass boats. Instead of leaking, wooden, rotting thing, heavy things. Good trailers, bearings. All these things came together sort of at the same time. So there was a wonderful alchemy taking place that gave birth to a whole sport. Basically light tackle, saltwater fishing, and saltwater fly fishing. And I just probably should have gone to medical school so that I could stay on the front of the boat, the pointy end. But it was so hard for me to leave the Keys in the Everglades that it eventually led me into guiding. And I did that for 14 years. And in the process, we needed good equipment. We needed good boats to go with the better motors. And we were really the only, my small group of friends and associates, we were the ones who knew what was needed. Nobody else did. Nobody else knew. And so along the way, innovations like push-pull holders, horizontal rod holders, sunken casting decks, outboard bait wells, things like that all were evolving then. And I was involved with a couple of different boat companies along the way, designing boats. And I saw the industry, the boating industry, being driven by the guide world and by affluent people being drawn to the sport. The guides wanted bigger boats. They wanted wider boats that were more stable. Well, the minute you made a shallow draft boat wider, the ride suffered. So they made them wider, but they added dead rise. When they added dead rise, they needed more power to push the boat. So the boats got bigger, wider, deeper. The motors got bigger. You had to carry more fuel. The whole package was being driven by guides and wealthy doctors and people who wanted boats like the guides. So, because nothing was commercially available that was truly a technical product, several of us went to John boats, and we rigged out John boats in certain tricky ways, and we started fishing out of John boats, long range. I mean, we got to where we had tricks for using John boats that made them really good fishing tools, certain John boats. And then, in a conversation with a couple of friends, the idea of making a fiberglass John boat was being kicked around. And I was spending the most time in John boats, and so the objection to a John boat is that they're just so noisy. But I had the thought that if we took a John boat and forced the bow or the entry and the stem into a configuration that would make it quiet, but kept all the good running characteristics and shallow draft characteristics of a John boat and very, very lightweight, that we might have something. And the magic numbers for length and width seemed to be what this very, very popular John boat that we were using was. And it was 16 feet long, and at the chine it was 48 inches. And it was just a magical combination of numbers. Worked really well. So we tried it. Actually, Chris Moorjohn was really, really good at the math for figuring out draft and such like. And Chris put a pencil to it, discovered that we needed, to get the weight that we were after, which was right around 200 pounds, we had to increase the width slightly from 48 inches, I think, to 51 and a half or something like that, 52. And that became the exact dimension of the original Classic 16 Whipray. And we built the first one, powered it with a 25 two-stroke. Thing ran about 30 miles an hour with 2 people in it, super light. It was just over 200 pounds. Drew inches, just scant inches. And that was sort of the beginning, really, that was the beginning of the technical poling skiff market that we know today and see burgeoning today, and with competition all around. And I had this thought some while ago that, with regard to the competition that has developed in this marketplace, most of the serious competitors with Hell's Bay basically copied Hell's Bay. I mean, if they didn't actually copy, they copied the concept, which is fine. But they didn't come into the business knowing what we knew when we came into the business, and that was basically what's really needed. What's needed? How does it work? We learned all this through years and years of trial and error. And so although these people copied, they didn't even have enough knowledge to make it better. They just copied. So it was the perfect kind of competition to have. Somebody who couldn't make it better than what you're doing. But we can, and have and will. So. Well, one of the things that I remember about the beginnings of Hell's Bay was a conversation that Chris and Hal and I had in my garage at home. When we sat there, we were measuring my John boat and talking about this idea of forcing an entry in the front and what we expected out of this boat. And it wasn't going to market. I was building a boat for myself, and one for Hal, and one for Chris. That was it. We were just building 3 boats, and they were going to be one-off boats. And then a friend of mine pulled up into the driveway, and he saw us measuring and laying things out and everything. And when he heard what we were doing, he said, "Wait a minute, I want one of these boats too." And then Ted Jurasik wanted one, and Cassidy Summerall wanted one. And then, I mean, it just became apparent that we had to make molds because people wanted these boats. And we built the first one, and it was almost like a virus when people actually saw what it could do. And the whole idea that it could be powered by 25 horsepower. The passion spread. I mean, the passion that the 3 of us originally had. And it was seemingly the perfect partnership. I had a ton of knowledge about technical skiffs. Hal had been successful in business. Chris was very, very good boat builder and understood futuristic laminates and so forth, really understood them. And so it was the perfect combination to launch a really super technical boat. And when a couple of them got out there in the marketplace and found their way into tournament situations in Florida Bay, along the Keys and in the Everglades, it soon got to a point that if you weren't competing in a Hell's Bay skiff, you weren't in the deal. You couldn't get to the fish. And the whole idea of calling the boat a whipray was because whiprays, or stingrays, swim so shallow. Often you see them on the flats with their wings coming out, their backs out. That was sort of the idea for calling the boat a whipray, because it did go so shallow. And the Hell's Bay part came from Hell's Bay, which was a place that I loved to fish, and at that time was doing most of my guiding. I had sort of been forced into Hell's Bay because things were getting crowded. I wasn't enjoying fishing in a lot of the Keys and Biscayne Bay and that, so I was spending a ton of time in Hell's Bay. And because of Chris's talent with boat repairs and laminates and materials, we decided to call it Hell's Bay Boatworks and include repairs and refurbishing projects for other boats that people might want to bring. And early on in the history of the company, people did bring a lot of boats for us to do things to. And even hulls that they wanted built into technical boats. And so the idea of having a full-service Boatworks was attractive. And as that evolution began to take place, we actually, I brought some pictures to show you, we actually started this company under this oak tree up in St. Augustine. Chris built this little shed out of visqueen and lumber. And the first boat was lofted inside this visqueen building under a big oak tree that was raining acorns. I mean, they were constantly hitting the top of this visqueen building. And it became obvious immediately that we had to find a place to do this and begin to behave like adults, because people wanted these boats. And then soon the guides wanted them, and then soon everybody wanted them. And the history beyond that is pretty well known. I mean, we stuck with what we knew, and we stuck with what we knew was really right. There were no superfluous family trucksters built at Hells Bay Boatworks. Everything that we built was a fully functional, technical polling skiff. And those early precepts guided the company as it began to grow, and as it ultimately came to, I mean, to where it is now, I suppose.
Got all this history with Flip, and I mean, we've even got the old artifacts here. This is a model of the mock-up of the very first Hells Bays that came out, and we've got tons of material to draw on that really no one else has this amount of history and knowledge of how these skiffs came together and how skiffs in general have evolved over the years, from the time when they were just little wooden skiffs, the little gladesmen's, little glade skiffs that they made out back in the day out of plywood. We've now got the glade skiff. It's not exactly like that, but it's a fiberglass kind of version of that very small little boat, and a lot of the history that being able to run around these watery places that we have here. And like I said, we've got the tools, and this is really an old school tool that dates back hundreds of years on how they take a half hull and lay it and sculpt it out, and this really becomes your blueprint for making a new boat.
So I actually watched Chris do this. These were actually the design stations of the boat. I mean, this is every aspect of the spray rail and the chine and all of this. This really shows what I was talking about earlier. A perfectly flat bottom that starts about here to be forced into an entry and a sharp stem. If, by nautical engineering standards, this is probably not a very efficient way to build a boat. I mean, the dead rise should follow, to the stern, but this wasn't built to be an efficient boat. It was built to be a fishing tool.
An efficient fishing tool, not an efficient boat.
That's right. That's right. But we built it light enough that we could overcome this inefficiency with fairly small motors. So that was kind of the secret. And nobody had thought to do that at all. I mean, it was heresy when it was first introduced. People looked at it and they went, I mean, we actually, once we decided that we had to build molds because so many people wanted the boat, we actually approached some of the other boat companies to see if they would be interested in the project and buying what we had up to that point. And remember that our motives were to come out of it with a boat apiece and make sure that our friends had boats as well. And when we approached these other boat companies with this idea and they looked at it, they didn't take 5 minutes to say no. It was a concept that was so foreign that they absolutely couldn't get it.
But a lot of the things you were doing were very foreign to boat building. You know, you look at this, and this is a very old way of designing a boat and coming up with a design, but you took this, and the interesting thing is how you looked at the advanced aerospace and World Cup type of very lightweight, no wood, vacuum bagging. Those were things that were not really being used very readily in the boat building industry.
That was Chris's genius. That really was Chris's genius. He had been exposed to some of that and had the vision to bring it to this world.
But those techniques that were allowed you to get the lightness and the strength and put that into a very, very lightweight boat, when you went and took that to other boat companies, I'm sure they looked at that and thought, well, what are you guys doing? I mean, this is not the way you build boats. The boat building industry innovates very, very slowly, and you guys had done 4 quantum leaps forward in your technique.
There was another part of it too. When they saw the price tag of this little boat, they couldn't understand that. I mean, they were building much bigger, much fancier boats and delivering them as a package with bigger motors, bigger trailers, bigger boats for half what we were charging for this silly little thing. But when this got into the hands of someone who knew what to do with it, it was like putting a scalpel in the hands of Dr. DeBakey. I mean, he knew what to do with a scalpel, and people found out quickly that this was a serious tool. So unfortunately, the founding fathers of all this had skills that turned out not to include business, but we stuck with it long enough to create a name and a brand and a demand.
Mm-hmm.
And then, unfortunately, our combined lack of business acumen caught up with us. And some bad decisions were made, and we wound up watching the company go into another phase, which turned out to be a wonderful one. And the day that Wendy and yourself put your stamps on this company and these projects, I think was probably one of the brighter days in the history of the company. And the most refreshing thing about it for me is that you have maintained the standards and the spirit of what this company originally intended these products to be. And you know, people like Todd have joined the effort, you know, who bring a whole nother level of passion into the marketing and the actual building of the thing, and another level of pride. And so it's very refreshing for me to sort of sit back, watch all this happening, and have good feelings about it. And I'm sure that founders of other businesses look at what's happened to their businesses and have horrible regrets. I certainly don't.
Well, you know, what we've got here today is you've got almost the same kind of mixture. You know, the guys in the factory, most of them are all very passionate fishermen, and they're passionate about their craft, but they're great glass guys, they're great riggers, they're great wiring guys. You know, they're craftsmen out there in the shop that produce these things, and they're passionate about what they do, and they're passionate and proud of the product they produce. You know, Todd and I and Wendy and everybody else here is very passionate about fishing and about the fishing culture, and particularly shallow water fishing. So it's just, so far, that's been a real natural for us to try to progress and try to bring some innovative products to the market, but still building on those same founding values I think you talked earlier about. So
without the passion, you might as well be building fire hydrants.
that's true.
I mean, that's
That's right.
That's the glue.
That's the glue.
One of the things that has me so excited is this new classic Whipray project. I mean, for me to know that those original molds are coming off the shelf after languishing up there for all this time, and that the Whipray will reemerge, and that I'm getting the first one.
Yeah,
I'm pretty darn
It's gonna
excited.
be like coming home again.
It will be.
Well, you have to get the first one because you're gonna tell us how to put it all together and how it needs to go. So, you know, there's no plans for it. We're gonna build it, as you say, you know.
I remember how to do it. We'll get that done, and I know that it's gonna probably go very much like those first ones went. I want one, yeah, you're gonna want one, you're gonna want one, you're gonna want one. And pretty soon,
A lot of people will want one, so.
yeah, I don't think I could use mine for another week or so.
Yeah, we're really excited to be working with you, Flip, on bringing that classic, Whipray back and to see, that passion come from you and
How
be able
many are
to.
you gonna build?
We're gonna build 10 skiffs.
10?
Yep, we're gonna build a limited number of them, and it's gonna be with that original signature that you had on it. And
Somebody leaked the information to me the other day that you have a tricky cooler project up your sleeve too.
we do.
Oh, yeah.
And we're gonna be working with some of the partners that you work with, being Yeti Coolers and Evinrude as well, to complete that skiff and make it a kind of a limited edition, Flip Pallot original.
Don't put my name on it.
We've gone back and you brought us this old dog-eared hat of yours, but it's got the old true Whipray Hell's Bay Boatworks logo on it, and someone else has kindly over the years given me this old, and I say old, it's dog-eared, but this is the
Remember that shirt?
Absolutely.
original Hell's Bay with the Whipray, with the true little Whipray skate-looking Whipray in there. And
It's just like the boat though. The boat was a no-nonsense traditional boat. It almost sounds silly to say it about a t-shirt, but back in those days, every boat, every game boat that was campaigning around the world had a t-shirt.
yeah, yeah.
And it was a one-color t-shirt with one-color lettering on it. There were no Guy Harvey-esque.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of
Drawings.
colors. It was
No,
hard to get
one
those
color.
silk screens. More than one color was a
And
real pain in the neck.
They all had a pocket.
Yeah.
It was a classic pocket tee, and this is the locker room gray. That was.
So we're bringing back the whole package. We're bringing back the boat,
The
as
classic
always.
t-shirt with the pocket included, and
That's fabulous.
we've decided the original Whiprays were not really Hell's Bay Boatworks. It was just a Whipray, wasn't it? I mean, it's all there really was.
You know what I would love to do, if it's okay with you guys, is I would love to design a special trailer for this
Okay.
boat.
We can do that.
I mean, just a special trailer for the Whipray, knowing now what we've learned over, this long span, a decade or more, about trailers and launching these things anywhere, which is one of the wonderful things about the Whipray. You could launch it anywhere.
Right.
But I have some ideas about a trailer that I think you'd
Good.
like.
Good. I'd love to see it. I mean, that'd be fun. But this whole project, start to finish, is going to have a lot of your fingerprints on it. But we've even talked. We're going to just include just the traditional Whipray logo on the side of the boat. It won't say Hell's Bay. It'll just have the little Whipray and the Whipray insignia on it. So through and through,
People
it's
will
gonna be
know what it
Whipray.
is.
Yeah, well, they will.
People will know.
They will know. They will know.